In the 90s and early 2000s, there was a genre of film that frankly took the world by storm. These movies could make you laugh and make you cry all in the span of about 90 minutes or so. They laid the foundation for what every person wanted to strive for in a relationship with their significant others, for better or for worse. So if you haven't figured it out yet based on the title of the episode, I'll tell it to you straight. Romantic comedy movies, aka the Rom Com. They rose to prominence over 30 years ago. They fizzled out again in maybe the late 2000s, but for a period of about 15 years, the Rom Com was king. Or queen, however you want to look at it. And since Valentine's Day is right around the corner, what better time to talk about one of the true relics of our generation? So grab your bouquet of flowers, sign into your AOL email account to see if you've got mail, and listen to a great conversation between myself and my good friend Laura as we dissect rom-coms of the 90s right here on Generation S.
What is it?
It's time to go back. Welcome.
Hey there, welcome back to another episode of Generation S. Podcast about growing up in the 90s and early 2000s. My name is Dan Kemp, and joined today, the returning fantastic co-host that she always has been, Miss Laura Wachtler. How are you, Laura?
I'm great. How are you? Good evening.
Yeah, I'm doing great. Now, you may notice there's an audio quality difference. We're actually, sadly, not in the same room for this episode. We are in different locations, and so we be going remote today.
Yes, wave of the future over here.
But dude, welcome back. Seriously, it's been forever since we did one of these, and you're still on. I mean, so we did an episode previously about the battle of the boy bands, talking all about boy bands from the late 90s, the early 2000s, and very popular. I've gotten a lot of very positive feedback. A lot of our compliments on the show on that episode were just the chemistry that you and I had. So apparently, I mean, we've set the bar pretty high. I'm just saying.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Yeah, I don't know where that came from. I am no expert in that subject, but I am, I guess, pretty passionate.
Yeah, well, it came through. It came through in your discussion with me. So, but anyway, so it is February, and for better or for worse, I think February is known for a lot of things, but one of those being Valentine's Day. And which is a very, I guess it's a polarizing subject for some people. Like if I ask you, like, what Valentine's Day, where do you fall on that spectrum now as a grown-ass adult?
As a grown-ass adult, I have a husband. I love him very much. We've been together a long time. It is a forced holiday. It is a Hallmark holiday. With that said, you still need to bring home flowers and candy and potentially something shiny. But ultimately, it's kind of ridiculous and silly. But I am having a Galentine's Day little thing at a fritzy little restaurant next weekend or 2 weekends from now. So it's just an excuse for us all to get together because we're tired old housewives.
Now, I don't want to stereotype here, but is it brunch?
How'd you know? We're that basic?
I feel like that's a thing, like Galentine's Day brunch. Like y'all go out, get your bottomless mimosas. You talk about how much your husband sucks sometimes, but you still love them. And so you come home and you give him a big old hug after 3 or 4 mimosas. Like that's the thing, right?
That's it.
And that's okay. I'm not going to judge that. That's totally fine. So for me, I feel like I probably fall in a similar camp of like Valentine's Day it's very commercialized now. Like, I mean, just walking into a Kroger next door. It's for those of you who don't live in Georgia, Kroger is our big grocery chain here. So you walk in, and the day after Christmas, they're already putting out Valentine's Day stuff on the shelves, right? Like they're treating it now like a major holiday. Like they're putting it up there in the echelon of, Halloween and Christmas. And it shouldn't be, in my opinion. I think it's been way overhyped. Again, that being said, will I absolutely be getting my wife flowers? Yes, of course I will. Will I absolutely be trying to take her out to dinner? Obviously. But so I think we're in the same boat there.
I think so. I mean, my favorite part about your Valentine's Day, Halloween, Christmas, and Easter, actually. Yes, I'm Jewish, but Easter is a wonderful holiday. Why? Because the day after, the candy all goes on sale, and that's my jam.
Yeah.
You got to go to Target the next morning.
Yep. Oh, I mean, I feel
It's the
like
Black Friday of Easter.
well, they're pretty much like right because he had Good Friday before, now you got Black Friday afterwards.
But
But they're actually starting to put that stuff on sale even before the holiday now. Sometimes, like I'll see, like I saw it at Halloween. They had Halloween candy like 50% off, like the day of. So I'm just saying, it's, keep an eye out. It may even happen before Valentine's Day in this case. Because Valentine's Day, to me, it's all about chocolate, right? That's like the go-to, sweet. And chocolate's my jam. So I think my favorite holiday to eat candy at is probably Valentine's Day because it's focused on the chocolate, right? And
absolutely.
And for some reason, beef jerky, a lot of that out there on Valentine's Day for the guys. That became like a thing. Like,
as if
I'm not
you guys
mad
aren't
at
allowed to like chocolate.
Right? I mean, listen, I like chocolate. I like beef jerky, so I'm not mad either way. It's fine.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. I noticed that too in the like the last 10 years, beef jerky has like become like the man gift. But I'm not mad at
I
that.
guess so. I mean, whether it's chocolate, beef jerky, hot sauces are kind of a thing,
that's
right?
another one. Yep.
I mean, all of it tastes better if it's on sale.
Yes.
So that's how I feel about
100%. So, well, listen, we're not talking Valentine's Day today, but the reason I brought it up is because the topic of today's episode is very much, I think, in line with, the sentiment behind Valentine's Day. Just talking about the L word there, love. And because we're talking about rom-coms from the 90s today, right? And I feel like the 90s popularized what is considered a romantic comedy movie. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, absolutely. A comedy really, besides like your slapstick and historically all that really other cute slapsticky stuff for the decades before, it didn't really have a twist.
No.
It didn't really have a hybrid until the 90s.
Yeah.
And I mean, and it definitionally wise, you and I have to talk about that, of course, but it has to have both, technically.
No, it needs to be equal parts romance and equal parts comedy. So, So you bring up a very good point. Before we get into, because I want to talk about some of the actual movies, because that's what people are listening to this for. Is they want to hear the movies that maybe they forgot about. But let's talk about what makes a comedy a rom-com, right? It can't just be a comedy, so what is the kind of the secret sauce, if you will, to what makes a good rom-com? What do we have to have as far as like, what are the rules, so to speak?
Somebody's got to have a bleeding heart somewhere.
Okay. So a hopeless romantic maybe, or
maybe a hopeless romantic, or somebody just hopeless.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And of course we'll talk about, how that girl finally gets seen because she took her glasses off and her hair down. Oh my gosh. Yeah, but in general, it's really not that difficult to immediately kind of see and feel whatever is going to be romantic, right? I mean, and especially in the 90s, they were really, really literal in the way that they put that out with the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It was like you immediately heard that music, you immediately saw the camera slow down on whoever it was. That was, their heart was beating 10 times faster now.
Yeah.
A lot of it was, a formula in the movie, and you could just basically write it, but you still had to watch it and see what happened.
Absolutely. Let's talk about that too for a second too. You mentioned the music. I feel like for a rom-com to be a rom-com, it needs to have some kind of upbeat music for the most part. It could be pop. Mm-hmm. It could be because, a lot of the ones we're going to talk about actually, used soundtracks that had pop songs from the time period, right? So, but there were certainly other movies that I consider rom-coms that didn't necessarily have like popular music, but it had kind of an upbeat score to it where it had kind of an optimistic feel. Obviously, there was going to be the sad parts, which, we'll talk about that as part of the formula. But in general, there's kind of a positive vibe throughout the soundtrack. Would you agree with that too?
Yeah, and in fact, those movie soundtracks, some of them were my favorite things. I mean, I definitely went through heavy phases with certain soundtracks.
Yeah. Oh, because that's the thing. You would buy the CD.
I could name them.
Yeah.
For sure. Oh, yeah. And then it was basically like, Summer Mixtape 3.
Yeah.
XOXOXO Love Laura.
Yeah.
Given to Dan. But all it really was like most of the songs from my 3 favorite movies.
But listen, that's okay, because I feel like that was most people's favorite songs, and that's why they were in the movies, is because they were so popular for what they were. Or there were cases where they were first shown in the movies and then became very popular and were getting a lot of airtime on the radio after the fact.
Right, exactly.
I feel like that's a thing too. All right, so we've got the kind of the hopeless romantic. We've got the soundtrack kind of setting the mood here. Another thing for me that I think needs to be in every rom-com is there has to be some kind of misunderstanding at the end of the movie that could very easily be explained with "let me explain," but they never let them explain and they just walk out. And so you've got this sad period where, the couple that you want to get together is separated for the time being and kind of going through their own stuff. And then they end up coming back together either through a grand gesture or something subtle. I don't think it needs to be one or the other, but there needs to be something that brings them back together at the end to kind of wrap things up and put a bow on it.
Absolutely. There has to be a hurdle
Yep.
that they overcome to show that love is somehow strong, even though it could be, the most ridiculous, weakest slug.
Yeah.
If you really think about it.
It is true if you think about it. Yeah, some of these people have been dating for maybe a month or two, and all of a sudden there's this big thing at the end. We're like, oh, they're going to be together forever, which you don't know that. They've only been together for 2 to 3 months.
Yeah. I mean, more than half of the movies we're going to talk about, the people are in high school.
So as an adult watching, and we'll talk about that too, is like, have these aged very well, or as an adult, do you have kind of a different perspective on this kind of teen romance that we're going to be discussing? The other thing I want to make note of here is just talking about that formula. Is what really has kind of taken that formula to a whole new level is like the Hallmark Christmas movies, because I feel like, I mean, and here's the thing, I want to say this: I'm not a huge fan of them. I appreciate them for what they are. I don't like watching them because they're so predictable and they're pretty much all the same thing. But I feel like the general vibe and steps that you go through when watching one of those movies owes its existence to these rom-coms from the 90s and the early 2000s, because there's a lot of the same beats.
Absolutely. I mean, oh my God, the premise of the quintessential Hallmark movie is about as elementary as a story my 5-year-old can make up.
Yes. So it's a watered down. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. However, man, you can't look away. You know exactly what's going to happen. You can write it yourself. Any old person, probably better. If you just had some really, small budget to make it. But you're going to watch it and you're going to love it.
Well, listen, that's the
thing. You're going to hate yourself.
I don't care if a story is predictable. Like that's not the issue. It's when the actors don't have chemistry or the setting is just not vibing with me. Like there's a lot of factors, but like if the story is well told, it could be the same story told, as they say in one of my favorite animated movies, it could be a tale as old as time, right? But if it's told the right way with the right elements, I'm going to watch it.
Yeah.
Like not to go off too much on a tangent here, but just, on a different genre of movie. Have you seen the first Avatar movie?
Of course.
And can you tell me with the utmost certainty that it's not a ripoff of Pocahontas or Dances with Wolves?
I have no certainty if I said that.
Okay. My point being, it's a very predictable story that you've seen before, but it was told in such a way that you don't care. It was amazing. So that's my point.
It was amazing.
Is that if you're using the tropes, that's fine. But if you do it in a way that's going to keep me entertained, I'm all for it. I don't care. I don't necessarily need something new out of it. If it works, it works. But you got to make sure it's being told in the right way. And that's all I was trying to say.
I have such a vivid memory of where I was when I saw that first movie.
Oh, Avatar?
Of Avatar.
Yeah.
Oh, man,
Blew
it was
my
so
mind.
good.
Did you see the second one yet?
Blew my mind. No, I have not yet.
It's really good.
Hurts me.
Yeah.
I know I need to.
It's really good.
Dying. But I don't have 3 entire hours.
It's 3 hours.
Ever.
Actually, you need 3 entire hours and 12 minutes on top of that, too.
Yeah, that's just
plus
like
the previews.
2.5 meals. It's a lot of snacks.
Oh my gosh. All right. So let's do this. We kind of talked about how we want to structure this today. Why don't we go through and start with like the movies that are, because we actually both found the same article online, like the top 30 plus rom-coms from the 90s that you need to rewatch. And we were both kind of going through that list going, these aren't rom-coms. Like, why are they falling into this category? Just because there is a romantic interaction or something, that's what qualifies, which I think that's ridiculous. So why don't we start, because you actually grouped these up pretty nicely. We'll start with kind of the lower end of the totem pole and then work our way toward like we'll call it the Mecca, like the Mecca or whatever you want to call it, like the creme de la creme of rom-coms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's no reason to rag on these movies, but there's definitely, we need to recategorize them.
Yeah.
Just because they were super popular and there was some aspect of romance and or comedy doesn't mean, you get to just make it a whole rom-com.
No, exactly.
So yeah, we absolutely have to get to the mechas, but and even between the mechas, I have to pull them into two massive piles. One pile being kind of the teeny bopper pile, which is of course, really probably where I jammed out more. And
Yeah.
then you have your more mature pile as well. So I'm sure we'll get into those. But there was like the really, really silly comedies, which are just straight up
They're
comedies.
comedies. Yeah.
They're comedies. American Pie, Something About Mary, right? I mean, he was obsessed and everybody was in love with Mary, and clearly it was quite comedic.
Yeah.
But come on, there was no true romance.
No, I mean, you had some of the, like, they had the montage where they're like going on dates and stuff, but it was overshadowed by, kind of that Farrelly Brothers slapstick humor, right?
Exactly.
So I agree. I think American Pie as well. I would never call that a romantic comedy. I would call that a lustful comedy. I mean, it's a sex comedy, right? That's I think it invented that genre, which is in and of itself, we could have a whole discussion on that of sex comedies, because those are still a thing to a degree. What are some other ones I saw? It Takes Two.
I saw.
Do you remember that movie?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why, that's not a rom-com.
Yeah. No, it was really like a heartfelt family movie, to be quite honest. It was just.
Well, let's give a recap.
I mean, it was Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen.
Yeah, I was going to say, so Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen play these twin girls that apparently aren't related in the movie, but look just like each other and decide to switch places, almost like a Parent Trap kind of vibe, but they're not trying to get their parents together because they're not related. They just happen to get their significant. Well, one of them has a dad, and the other one has like a camp counselor or something. It's not even her mom. It's just like a.
No, I think Christy Alley is the like the social worker or something. She's
something.
Yeah.
But Steve Guttenberg, Christy Alley, they get them together.
Rest in peace, Christy Alley.
Yeah, man, that was rough to hear that.
That's a hurtful one, yeah.
She was, I discovered a lot of feelings from Look Who's Talking back in the day, is all I'm going to say.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, we all did. But honestly, she was quite a great actress way before those movies.
No, 100%. I agree. She was fantastic in Cheers. That's what I first saw her in, was Cheers.
Yeah, absolutely.
I loved her in that, So anyway, that was one on the list that I don't agree with.
No.
These are.
I don't agree with Rami and Michelle's high school reunion.
Okay.
That is straight up just silly comedy.
Yeah.
Zoolander, Night at the Roxbury, Son-in-Law with Pauly Shore.
Oh yeah.
Encino Man. I mean, they're great 90s movies.
Yeah.
I love them.
They're comedies.
100% comedies.
Yeah.
That's all they are. There's maybe some love interest and silly, love making connotation, but that's it.
I don't know. Honestly, you mentioned Son-in-Law. I could almost make the argument for it, because the whole idea is that the two main characters end up falling in love inadvertently. And that's like a part of it at the end, because because the whole plot of Son-in-Law, for those of you who haven't seen it, it's Pauly Shore, and the gal's name is escaping me. I forget the name of the lead actress. She's fantastic in it though. And so anyway, long story short, they are college roommate friends, and Pauly Shore's character is not, he doesn't have any family to go home for Thanksgiving with. So she says, well, why don't you come with me? You can be my boyfriend. You'll come home for Thanksgiving. Or no, does she have to fake it? I forget. Like, what happens there? Like, does she? No.
They first start faking it.
That's
how they started out that way, but then they fall for each other.
And they really fall for each other. And then you kind of hit on the similar rom-com beats. That's why, to me, you could almost argue Son-in-Law, of all the ones you've mentioned, could maybe fall into that category. A bit more on the comedy, but if we're doing a ratio here, some of those others were like 90-10 comedy romance. This is probably closer to like 65-35, maybe even 60-40.
Absolutely agree.
In my opinion.
The other pieces are, I'm just going to say a name, and he himself in the 90s and early 2000s is a genre.
Okay.
And that is one of my first childhood crushes, Adam Sandler.
Okay.
There are a handful of his movies that are 1,000% just heart-throbbingly adorable rom-coms. Wedding Singer, I would say, is up there.
Yep.
Big Daddy might almost be there as well.
No, that was more about the relationship with him and the kid.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I guess so. I have to give you that. But the rest of it was really comedy.
Yeah.
Comedy.
Yeah.
There was another one with Drew Barrymore.
50 First Dates. That's a rom-com.
Thank you. Yep, absolutely. That's a rom-com. But in general, he was comedy.
Yes.
All the way. Except for a few flops there. But yeah, he's spectacular. I mean, and then he did what did he do that was really, really comedic? Airheads
Oh, and I never
with
saw that
Steve
one.
Buscemi and Brendan Fraser. Oh, you are kidding
No,
me,
I never
right?
saw it. I really didn't.
Gosh, you're missing out, man.
There's
You really,
a
really
few
are.
of
I mean,
these.
Steve Buscemi is one of those B-list actors who just is perfect in every role. Like
Oh
he's
yeah.
supposed to be that guy. And Brendan Fraser, who,
Yes.
has been irrelevant for a very long time, and he has raised his hand and said, just because, I've gained a lot of weight and I'm not the sexy guy in Hollywood as I age doesn't mean I'm irrelevant, but he did some really cool stuff. And in fact, I really have to see that new movie.
The Whale.
Whale.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, speaking of Encino Man, that was also
Brendan Fraser. Yep.
and Pauly Shore. But anyhow, let's call those true comedies and get them off the list.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
if you ever look up anything with Cosmo, be careful, man.
Yeah.
And then you have these borderline teen dramas that still want to be rom-coms because there is some adult content going on, and so you think that that's romantic, but it's not necessarily.
All right.
And it's really just teen drama. So you have American Beauty,
Yeah.
which was a little dark, especially
Kinda
at its
creepy.
time.
Kind of creepy in
Kind of
hindsight.
creepy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely dark. Not horror,
No.
but dark. Empire Records, which that was a really talk about name dropping. That was Renee Zellweger, Liv Tyler before they got big.
Yep.
Which was really, really good. And then you have, oh my God, Ethan Embry, I think his name is.
Oh yeah, he's
yeah, from Vegas Vacation and Can't Hardly Wait.
And Grace and Frankie.
And we'll talk about those. And Grace and Frankie.
Yep.
And then you have Armageddon, which I love Armageddon. And talk about a soundtrack.
Movie. Yeah, but it's not a romantic comedy.
But it's not
there's
a
no
romantic
comedy. There's no first off, there's no comedy. Second of all, it's a what do you call it? Like an end of the world film, like a disaster movie.
Yeah,
it's not a romantic.
Well,
comedy.
they try to. It is not. They try to bring a lot of comedic relief with, all the guys that are going where they got to go up in space to drill, oil.
Yeah, but the comedy isn't brought from like a loving relationship between a couple. That's where the the comedy has to be from a relationship, not circumstantial.
But then you have another genre, right? So you have your teen horrors, which are Scream. I know what you did last summer, Final Destination.
Yeah.
I mean, lots of great heartthrobs in those, but they're horror. Then you have these dark comedies that are again, dark, and they sometimes have some graphic, yucky stuff going on, but they weren't necessarily they weren't romantic, and they were more comedic and dark than anything. And those were Idle Hands.
Okay.
Shout out to Devon Sawa, by the way. That talk about a heartthrob.
Yeah.
Jessica Alba before she was Jessica Alba. Obviously Cruel Intentions, which is a spectacular cast.
Yes.
And your comedic relief was, Selma Blair.
Yes.
But in general, that was some heavy stuff for teens. You have Jawbreaker, which was, very dark, obviously, covering up that murder. And you have Chasing Amy, which was actually some of the first pieces of memories that I have with, learning a little bit more about the LGBTQ community.
Yep.
And I thought that was pretty amazing because I learned that this girl can be bi. What's bi?
Right.
Yeah, so those are dark comedies. So I was very much so get that off my list, man.
Yeah, I would say again, just going back to maybe one that you could almost loop in would be Cruel Intentions, because there is a romantic subplot. Granted, there's some borderline. It's not considered incest because they're not related, but it's still with the Ryan Philippe and Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Mm-hmm. So that's our segue right there.
Yeah.
That is apparently a good reoccurring theme that works well, because to me, that is also in the mecca of rom-coms.
Okay.
Here we go. Clueless.
Yeah. All right. If we're going to jump to it. So Clueless, I would say, is absolutely
right into it. I have to.
All right. So So let's just so our listeners can kind of keep up. So we are now transitioning to the teeny bopper mecca movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I have a confession right out of the gate here. I have never seen Clueless.
You have to get out of here.
No, I've never seen it. I swear to God. I'm the only person I know who has not seen it.
You are actually failing at life. Just so you know, my friend.
Yeah,
Um,
never seen it.
that's terrible. It is so good, and it does hold up. So as soon as we get off of this call, um, yes, it's 9 p.m. on a Sunday evening. You need to drop everything.
Oh
Don't
my.
worry about your family or your job, and go watch
I
it.
think Beth would watch it with me, so it might not be that bad.
Of course she would, because she's cool.
I do know some of the cast members in it, and I feel like I may have seen like clips of it here and there because I remember some scenes. Like I know, obviously, Alicia Silverstone is, I don't remember the character's name, but she's the main actress in it.
Cher Horowitz.
There it is. You've got Brittany Murphy. I remember she was in it. Love her, by the way.
Ty.
Yep. Okay.
Aw,
And
rest in
then
peace.
and then the only other one I remember the actor was Paul Rudd because he was like
Of course,
the heartthrob of it.
And so he is her ex-stepbrother
Okay.
in the movie, and they end up, being a thing.
All right.
So
there's the
that's
tie
where we
into
get
Cruel
the
Intentions
incest again. There's your tie-in.
Yeah.
There it is.
Okay.
Yeah. It was a backhanded way, but we got there.
Oh, yeah. It's a perfect organic segue.
So yeah, to me, that's the mecca of rom-com. I could talk about Clueless all day.
Okay.
I can quote it all day with my brother. We love it.
So your brother has
It's the
seen it.
best.
So it's not like it's just a girl movie.
million times.
Like as a guy, I would
No.
enjoy it.
No, and he had like the most major crush on Alicia Silverstone.
I mean, who
He
didn't?
probably still does.
So I had a crush on her, but not from that movie. You know what I saw her in that I loved her in? It was Batman and Robin.
Well, yeah, she was awesome.
She was fantastic. She's probably the
That
best thing
girl.
about that movie, to be honest with you. That and Arnold
They're like,
Schwarzenegger.
yeah, there weren't that many, so
No.
I liked Ivy.
Yeah, she's okay.
Yeah, she's all right.
So, all right. So we're going teeny boppers now.
We're going teeny
All right.
boppers all the
Can
way.
I throw out one that I have seen that I've seen many times?
Sure.
You ready? Okay. She's All That.
She's All That.
One of my favorites. I will watch that on repeat. Love that movie.
Yeah. I actually really disliked Rachel Lee Cook. I thought she was like the worst little actress on the entire planet Earth.
Oh, really?
And I always thought that the movie fell short because of her.
Huh.
But heartthrob Freddie Prinze Jr. was the reason to watch that movie.
Well, sure.
Ever.
Yeah. No, I mean, this guy's a stud. Still is. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen
Yeah.
recent pictures. He's gone silver fox on us, but he's a good-looking guy.
Yeah.
But listen, I want to disagree with you because I actually think Rachel Lee Cook is a very good actress. I loved her in this film here. Actually, you know what the first movie I saw her in? Do you remember the movie Tom and Huck from Disney?
Oh my gosh, yes.
She was Becky. I don't remember her last name, but she was the girl that
Oh my
Tom Sawyer had a
gosh.
huge crush on.
You're right.
Mhm.
Wow.
So that's what I first saw her in. And again, from that, because I was around the same age that the kids were in that movie, and I'm like, oh, I could see why Jonathan Taylor Thomas is interested in this gal because she's got it going on. And then, of course, she threw glasses on and didn't tweeze her eyebrows for a few weeks, and all of a sudden she's, she's Janie Boggs, or I forget her name in that. It's the reason I can't remember her name is because I'm mixing her up with the character that parodied her in the movie Not Another Teen Movie. So I never heard that when it was like Janie Briggs. So I think it's Jamie Boggs or something. By the way, did you ever see Not Another Teen Movie?
Yeah, those were so bad.
Oh, that one
So
was
good,
good.
so
That
bad.
one was good.
That one was okay. Yeah.
That was that and the original Scary Movie were the only two parody movies that I thought done good as far as like they really
Done good.
They done good. Yeah. So she's all that.
And she's all that. And they had the premise of the whole why Freddie Prinze Jr., had to prove himself, I guess, was that he lost his high school girlfriend to one of the guys in the Real World cast on MTV.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got like bits and pieces of that too, which was like a show that people watched. So
well, and
and I remember his best friend in the movie was Paul Walker.
Paul Walker.
Another rest in peace, man.
Yeah.
But obviously I never saw him again and knew nothing about him until, all the Fast and Furious.
Oh, really? You never saw the movie Pleasantville?
Oh, I never saw it, but I know about it.
You need to watch
Maybe
it.
I knew that.
If I'm going to watch Clueless, you need to watch Pleasantville because I think you'll absolutely love it.
Deal.
It's funny. So I don't know if you realize this, but She's All That is actually very loosely based on a very old play called Pygmalion. Do you remember that play that you used to read in high school? Did you ever have to read that one?
I don't think so.
It was also the inspiration for an old movie called My Fair Lady with Audrey Hepburn.
Well, that I know.
It's all based on
But
Pygmalion.
no,
Yeah, it's like a
I
modern
did
retelling.
not read Pygmalion. Yeah, I mean, I'm a product of the Florida public school system, so I'm
Yeah,
going to fall short on anything
but I feel
that
like
has
you
to do with
love the
reading.
theater, though, right?
I do love theater.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So, well, speaking of which, this is a perfect organic segue into another rom-com that is, I would categorize as teeny boppers, and one that I have not seen, but I know that it's based off of a play. You ready for this? 10 Things I Hate About You.
The Taming of the Shrew.
Yes.
That's my number 2.
And I have not
That's
seen
my
it.
number 2. Okay. Julia Stiles, Heath Ledger, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Come on. The cast is so good.
You know what's really funny is I've seen the trailer for it, like, because it was on like whatever VHS I had as a kid. It was like one of the trailers or whatever. The only character I knew from the trailers was the dad, because he was the dean in Nutty Professor. That's the only reason I was like, oh, that guy's in it. I know him. But now, yes, of course, I know Julia Stiles. I know, obviously, Heath Ledger, R.I.P. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, I think, is fantastic. First saw him in Angels in the Outfield. He was lovely.
It's amazing. And now he's grown up to be, what I believe one of the sexiest men alive.
I mean, he's a good-looking guy. Yeah.
He's a good-looking guy.
The last thing I saw him in was actually something I watch every year at Christmas time, is The Night Before. Have you?
I never saw that.
Oh, you need to watch that. It's fantastic. One of the best Christmas comedies of all time. I literally have watched it every year since it came out 8 years ago.
Oh, got it.
High marks from me. So 10 Things I Hate About You. Yeah, I never saw it. I've always heard good things. Like, it's one of those that I've heard actually does hold up pretty well.
It holds up very well.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some ridiculous parts. She flashes her teacher at some point.
Okay. Julia Stiles does.
Julia Stiles on the top to get out of detention. The father is the, overbearing father. He's a gynecologist, and he makes, certain jokes about not wanting his daughter to go out because he was elbow deep in placenta that day. So there's some inappropriateness. Kind of like the douchebag in the movie is a male model, and there's all kinds of jokes about.
That's the Heath Ledger guy?
No, Heath Ledger's the heartthrob, man.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
He's the bad boy who's really soft inside.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, there we go.
Yeah. See, you're missing out.
You know what's funny too is, do you see a resemblance between Heath Ledger and like an older Joseph Gordon-Levitt?
Maybe a little bit. It's so hard because Heath Ledger is part of the 27 Club, right? He passed away at the age of 27 with so many greats, and so he's stuck that age. He's not going to age in my head. And Joseph Gordon-Levitt has got to be at least, I would guess, in his mid to late 30s. A fine wine. But I guess I can see that a little bit with the straw jawline, and then they have similar, more pointed, pretty features.
I know. I don't know. Like, because I saw one time somebody held up a picture of two of them, and I'm like, I can see the resemblance. They could definitely pass as brothers. You know what I mean? Maybe not. Yeah. Maybe not twins.
I guess. Yeah. Maybe I could see that.
Yeah. So, well, anyway, so you mentioned Julia Stiles. She's actually she stars along with Freddie Prinze Jr. in another rom-com that I think has kind of gotten overlooked from the late 90s called Down to You. Did you ever see that movie?
I did. And that was the college era.
Yes.
They were. Yeah. And I remember really liking that movie because he was basically training to be a chef, I think.
Exactly. And his dad was...
I always thought I was going to marry a chef.
Oh, did you really?
I really did, because I just love food.
Yeah.
And I always found it to be very, like, sensual movie plot of some sort.
Food?
But go on.
Okay. No, well, I was going to say, you remember his dad was played by the Fonz, Henry Winkler, which is,
yes,
always good.
Of course.
Julia Stiles was great in it. And then there was a couple other characters in there. I can't remember. Rosario Dawson was in it. I remember that was one of her earlier roles. Where she was like their stoner hippie friend or whatever.
Yeah.
I actually really liked it. I found out later when Wikipedia became really a thing that like it was critically panned. Nobody liked it. It lost money. I had a VHS copy of it. And I'm like, this is really good. I actually genuinely enjoyed it. But I also liked Freddie Prinze Jr. a lot too. So
right. Another one that I would say is one of those, I think it was panned, not so good, but I loved it, was Drive Me Crazy.
I don't know that one, actually.
Melissa Joan Hart.
Okay.
And what's his name from Entourage? Adrian something.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
With the big eyebrows?
Grenier.
Grenier.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in that movie, they were spectacularly large. It's like they really forgot where the tweezers were. But that was part of his thing.
Yeah.
Where it was a little bit of a reverse She's All That.
Yep.
Where, all of a sudden they put him in a preppy polo with his collar popped, washed his hair, and he was no longer grunge, and now he was like kind of a good-looking neighbor.
Yeah.
But yeah, and Melissa Joan Hart, obviously, we all watched her as the teenage witch and all those things. I mean, I didn't love her in general. I thought she was, I don't know.
So here's the thing. I always
Lame.
liked her. She always reminded me of like my older sister. Like I never saw her going, that's like whatever the female equivalent of a teen heartthrob is. Like I didn't see her as that. So,
sweetheart.
Yeah, or I guess whatever you'd call it. Yeah, I don't know what the term is for it, but yeah. So I never saw that movie, unfortunately. I don't know. Yeah, I feel like when you're reversing the roles where like the guy has to get prettied up, I feel like there's some kind of subliminal messaging there where it just doesn't click as well. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe that's because I'm a guy and I just don't see it like, oh, it doesn't take much for a guy to look handsome, whereas unfortunately women have to go through so much just to be seen as what society views as attractive, which is disappointing.
It is. It definitely is. And it was no different in the 90s. In fact, it was even harder in certain aspects because we really viewed beauty as super, super skinny.
Well, that's the thing, is because we had such a limited access, such limited access to the media, compared to now where we were kind of being told this is what beauty standards are. Whereas now, I mean, there's something for everyone. Like that's normal and it's cool. And I dig it. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to fit a certain profile anymore to be considered what is, mainstream attractive. I mean,
right.
Case in point, what's the Rebel Wilson? I know she lost a bunch of weight, but like even when she was heavier set, from Pitch Perfect, I thought she's gorgeous, right? I mean, she's a beautiful woman, but obviously not kind of the standard Hollywood beauty. And yet I found her, gorgeous.
Right. I mean, what makes her beautiful before she lost weight and now, as well as most everyone, or at least how, they're pinning it, is that fit, healthy.
Yeah.
That's what makes you beautiful, not necessarily, sick skinny.
Right. Exactly.
So I appreciate that. But back to rom-coms,
right.
Of course.
Sorry.
But yeah, Drive Me Crazy. It definitely wasn't anything to write home about, but it's up there. I mean, it was popular.
Yeah.
And I really liked Adrian Grenier. I should look that up. Grenier. I don't know. Entourage. He was great.
Yeah. He's also in The Devil Wears Prada, by the way, if you ever saw that.
That is right.
But I wouldn't call that that's not a rom-com, though, is it?
It is not a rom-com.
No. I wouldn't even call it
it's
comedy.
Also, yeah.
That's depressing.
We're not there yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is actually. And it came out right when I was an intern and coming out of college. And, I'm like, oh my God, I have all this knowledge and I'm just going to be brilliant and the world is my oyster. And it was like, go make coffee.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But anywho.
Any more in the teeny bopper mecca category?
I would throw a couple more there.
Okay.
And interestingly enough, they both have Drew Barrymore, Wedding Singer, and Never Been Kissed.
Oh, I forgot about Never Been Kissed. That's another one of my favorites.
Cannot forget about that.
Yeah.
So that's another one. So we don't have, issues with, family members getting together, but he technically is the teacher and she's technically the student.
Yeah.
She's posing as a high school student. So really there's some illegal business going on there and I have to get closer and closer.
Well, so I wonder, I feel like we've started to develop another kind of rule to a good rom-com is almost this like forbidden fruit aspect of it, right? Like there's certain things like whether it's societal or legal or otherwise that like these two should not be together, and yet for some reason they end up together, and you're excited, you're happy for them. So maybe that's part of it too, is this kind of forbidden fruit aspect, like they're not supposed to be together, but they are, and it makes it more exciting.
It does make it more exciting, and that's the piece, the premise of having to overcome it. Yeah, absolutely. I think Never Been Kissed is really, really good, and it has such great supporting actors. That's another one, Jessica Alba. I mean, she was really before she was big and getting her own things going on. She was up there. Another one. Speaking of societal things to overcome. Oh, it's leaving my mind. Julia Stiles, Save the Last Dance.
Save the Last Dance. I think or she's like she learns like how to dance like hip hop or whatever. I think I saw it once. I honestly couldn't tell you the plot. I didn't hate it. I can't really remember it.
I just know that the Casey and JoJo song was on it.
Yes. Well, everyone loves that
I'm
song.
going crazy, crazy, crazy.
Yeah.
It was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was
love that.
controversial because it was an interracial relationship, right? Wasn't that like the big
Correct.
thing
That was
there?
exactly it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, I mean, again, kind of the like you said, the forbidden fruit kind of deal.
Mhm.
That's not a romantic comedy by any means. That's more of like a romantic dramedy, a rom-dram.
Mhm.
We should call it rom-drams.
Rom-dram.
It's a rom-dram.
A rom-dram. But back to Rom Com.
Yes.
Wedding Singer.
Yep. Is that teeny
which we
bopper,
said-
though?
I don't know if it was peanut bopper. It was maybe because it was a little sillier.
Yeah,
I put it
'cause
in
they're
teeny bopper,
adults.
but it is a little bit older. They are adults. Julia Gulia. Sorry, guys. I've really been listening to The Cure a lot.
Oh, my.
Yeah, that was really good. I'm gonna say to round out and end the Mecca titles
Yeah.
for rom-coms of the teeny bopper era,
Sure.
because I know that we're now going to get into a little bit more of a mature era.
Yep.
Or mature audience, excuse me. Believe it or not, I'm going to just end it and say that we went out with a bang in 2004 with Mean Girls.
Another one that I've never seen. You want to know what's even worse? I own that movie. I have that movie in my possession, and I've never seen it.
I just need you to look deep in the mirror and wonder what you're doing with your life.
Well, I'm seeing myself on
Because you're
camera right
failing.
now, and I'm not happy with what I'm seeing. No, and you know what's funny?
Oh,
because
man.
I worked at an office. This is before you and I met, and like everyone, guys and girls, that's the main movie they would all quote all the time. Like they'd be like, I'm a cool mom. Or stop making fetch. Try to make fetch a thing. It's not going to work. I don't know, one of those.
Mhm.
But I've never seen the movie. I have no idea. But is that?
I mean, don't you feel bad about that? Don't you want to be?
I mean, yeah,
knowing of these pieces.
I do until I'm like, I'm okay. Like I got that FOMO for like a minute, and then it just wears off because then I move on with my life. You know, a movie I did see though, and this is not a rom-com, but it's a romantic movie, so we'll talk about it. Is The Notebook?
Well, okay, good. I'll give you that.
It's a great movie.
It's a great movie. It's not. I don't know if I'm forgiving you for Mean Girls, but
all right.
I'll give it to you. It was really good. I mean, Mean Girls is kind of, to me, the end of that 90s, early 2000s rom-com teeny bopper era.
Yep.
And, I mean, it was so perfectly cast. I mean, they made a Broadway show out of it, which, by the way, was spectacular. I saw it at the National Theater in Washington, D.C.
Oh, nice.
Probably, 8 or 10 years ago before it hit Broadway in New York, and it was still being workshopped, and I knew that was going to be really big, really good, and it had a really great run. It's adorable. It's absolutely adorable.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. That's another one where we had to overcome all kinds of beauty standards and socioeconomic standards, and this girl's from South Africa, and she'd been homeschooled and traveled the world, but she had no idea what it was like to live in middle America with mean teenagers, and so the dumb one immediately is like, why are you white? Because she comes from South Africa.
Right.
I mean, really. It was so good. And it holds up. It totally holds up. So,
all right.
Dan, homework for our next Snowmageddon Day?
Yes. We've got Clueless. I've got 10 Things I Hate About You. I've got Mean Girls. And you know what? I might as well watch The Wedding Singer because I actually have not seen The Wedding Singer. So that's going to go on there. So that's like one of the few Adam Sandler movies I have not seen. So that one I'll probably enjoy heavily.
Okay. All right. I'll let that one slide because you've probably seen the more important Adam Sandler movies. So
I have. I've seen many of them, including 50 First Dates, which I assume is going to be on our second part of the Mecca list.
Good assumption.
Yes. All right. So now we're moving on to the more adult, I guess. So we're out of high school. We're out of college. We're now talking about typically young adults, obviously. They're not going to necessarily be, super old. Although there are a few movies that I could bring up where the main actors are older. And by older, I mean like 40s and 50s, not like 80 or 90. But for the most part, I feel like it's still, young, attractive people in their 20s, maybe early 30s.
Mm-hmm.
So
usually,
yeah. So what are I want to actually start with this because there's like two movies right away that I'm thinking are kind of like the quintessential, and these are from the early to mid 90s actually, but I'm going to count them, is, we've got Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan in Sleepless in Seattle, and then You've Got Mail.
Absolutely. So, oh my God, Sleepless in Seattle. I mean, so good. I mean,
Yes.
you got the single dad with the kid, and they're going to be at the top of the Empire State Building. I mean, come on.
Mm-hmm.
Or not Empire State Building, excuse me, this is Seattle.
The Space
So
Needle,
at the
right?
Needle.
Yeah.
The Needle, yeah.
Same thing,
But
though.
it was the same thing. But oh man, so good. And the way that, they're all on that Delilah,
Yes.
late at night talking to her, and are you still awake? Is your loved one out there? And they're both looking up at the moon, but they're in different cities.
Mhm.
And I mean, I just ramble on and on.
Yeah.
Clearly, it pulls at my heartstrings.
And then You've Got Mail, I feel, was definitely not as heartstring pulling. It was definitely a bit more cynical. Still very good, though. And again, to me, when I think of a 90s rom-com, that is like the standard bearer. Like, that's what I think of as a 90s rom-com. Especially You've Got Mail, because I feel like another part of a rom-com to me is, and not in every case, but I feel like in most cases, it takes place in a major city. Usually New York, obviously, but Chicago, LA, Miami, whatever. A major city where, they're walking around, maybe part of their montage that they're going on dates and they're just walking around the city at night holding hands. You can't have that unless you're like, they're not going to do that in the suburbs or a small random town in Nebraska, unless it's a Hallmark movie, of course, but I digress. So, you've got these and it's funny because I went to New York City for the first time when I was 20. I'd never been before. And I grew up in New York, but 3 hours north of New York City. And so I finally went, and I'm walking around Central Park going, I have seen this exact setting in 5 or 10 romantic comedy movies, because to me, that when I think of New York City, that's the genre of movie I most associate the city itself with.
Absolutely. I think I agree with that sentiment.
Yeah.
I mean, and just even thinking about, these power women, and they're running around the city and they're gallivanting in their high heels, and just the way that you view it all.
Yeah.
We all associate these pieces with something. And I mean, You've Got Mail, literally, You've Got Mail is the sound that happened as soon as, you finally got through the AOL little guy running with all the sounds.
Yeah.
Welcome. Yeah. I mean, so the entire movie, the title of it is a sound that you just immediately associate with the 90s.
It is.
And then therefore rom-com.
It's a time capsule of a movie. And to me, ages incredibly well. Very rewatchable now.
Okay. So speaking of aging.
Yes.
I'm just going to go right for the first number one most, to me, quintessential. The starter literally came out in 1990 for the more mature rom-coms.
All right.
Not super, super funny, more romantic. Pretty Woman.
Oh, yes. 100%. Love that movie. Blew my mind when I found out it was a Disney movie.
Okay, you just blew my mind. It's a Disney movie?
Well, so technically it's Touchstone's Pictures, which is their adult.
All right.
But that was owned by Disney. It was they made Touchstone Pictures to put out more adult-themed movies.
Right.
So
it was funny and quirky because Julia Roberts had, a quirky sense on this dark life.
Yes.
But it was more romantic than anything. But it was mature content, to say the least. And it was more mature people. These are not teenagers.
No.
They're dealing with heavy stuff. This is, again, a city. It was LA, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. No, come on. And again, another Broadway musical made out of it.
Yeah. Oh, I think that if You've Got Mail, in my opinion, perfected the 90s rom-com, you couldn't have that without the Pretty Woman. I think I think Pretty Woman is the godfather, godmother, what would you call it? Because it's both. It's the godparent of 90s rom-com, the formula. Because
it's the start of it for sure.
There it is. Yeah. Well, speaking of Julia Roberts, there's two other movies I immediately thought of when we talked about the mecca of adult rom-coms. One of which is one we talked about before we started recording was Notting Hill, which with Hugh Grant, over in England. Actually, this is a true story. In my yearbook, I had to put my favorite movie, And I put Notting Hill because at the time I had watched it on loop just because I thought it was I never knew what it was. My parents owned it. I'm like, well, I know Julia Roberts and that guy looks pretty cool too. Let's go ahead and watch this. And I just fell in love with it. I think that was the first movie I saw that had like even hints of like British humor, which I love. And it was just done so well. Such a good movie.
It was such a good movie.
Yeah.
It was so good. You know, and it's the movie within the movie kind of.
It was kind of meta.
Thing because, yeah, because of course she's an actress. So
well, I always pictured myself like that was like one of the first movies that made me say, well, what happened if I married a famous person? Like I could get a famous person if I wanted, right? I'm appealing, she'd think I was cool. So like at that point, this was remember this was the guy that was listening to boy band music all the time too. I was a hopeless romantic, and I thought, well, where's my famous actress girlfriend? Like my celebrity girlfriend, she's out there somewhere, I'm sure. So, but this movie did not help with that sentiment because that's what it was all about. I was not nearly as good looking as Hugh Grant, but I mean, who is?
Don't sell yourself short.
Yeah. No,
well, absolutely.
So the other one though is, going back to Julia Roberts and Richard Gere, Runaway Bride.
Runaway Bride. I would not have thought about that one, but you're right.
100% a rom-com.
You're right. I thought you were going to go a different route.
Ooh.
My Best Friend's Wedding.
Never saw it.
Oh my God. Dan, I don't think I can handle any more disappointment. This conversation might need to end short.
Oh my God.
Guys, you need to get
I know. I'm adding it to the list.
I mean, this list is getting really long.
I know.
You should be disappointed in yourself, young man.
It's true.
Okay, Best Friend's Wedding.
Yep. It's got
Julia Roberts and Michael O'Neill are best friends from college. Okay. They seem to have never had any sexual chemistry, although you don't really see anything about that. But here they are in their late 20s. They're both powerhouses. How they have these big executive jobs at these points in their careers, of course, movie magic.
Yep.
And then they make this pact that if they get, older, then they'll one day be with each other. And then all of a sudden, Michael O'Neill calls Julia Roberts, says he's actually getting married. He's no longer, this suave player, and he's massively in love with this girl. Julia Roberts goes to meet her, and it's a wild, wild week of wedding shenanigans. Who is the younger woman? Cameron Diaz. And it is a wonderful cast of quirky, hilarious family members while Julia Roberts is trying to sabotage now this wedding so she can win him back.
Interesting.
And it is just so adorable. There's, of course, Julia Roberts' gay best friend who poses as her fiance at some point, which is also hilarious. And then there's a movie scene, of course, where they're all eating out at a restaurant that reminds me of like an Outback Steakhouse, Hello 90s. And they're all singing like, the moment I wake up, before I put on my makeup. And they're all just breaking out into song because why not?
Of course.
And, they're being that cheesy family. And it is just so good and heartwarming. And you will laugh out loud. You will cry a little bit at the end. I mean, to me, that's really, really up there. I mean, it's just right underneath kind of the Pretty Woman, Sleepless in Seattle.
Yeah. Well, listen, you touched on family and weddings, and you know what the first thing that came to my mind was when you said that? My Big Fat Greek Wedding, which I have seen, by the way.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Amazing movie.
Yeah. A great movie.
Yeah.
I still, to this day, can't even look at Windex without thinking.
It fixes everything.
It fixes everything. I'm going to put a little bit on my shoulder. No, it's an adorable, adorable movie.
Yeah.
And then there's a few others. There was Sandra Bullock did While You Were Sleeping.
Okay. Do I know that one?
That was adorable.
I don't know if I know that one.
Yeah, she's like this sad little lonely thing, and she's on a train platform one day, and she sees this guy go over, and she goes to save him, and he loses his memory, and then the family thinks that they were together, and he wakes up, and she kind of runs with it.
All right.
Yeah, it's cute. It's all right.
All right.
Yeah, there's also One Fine Day with Michelle Pfeiffer, who I love because obviously Catwoman.
Oh, well, yeah.
And George Clooney.
Mm-hmm. The other Batman.
The other Batman. Believe it or not, they became less successful after him.
I know, it's crazy.
It's crazy to think. I thought he was going to be rock bottom for Batman.
No, he came around.
Nope. And then the 2000s. And yeah, so I mean, there were some really wonderful, more mature
Well,
rom-coms
so I have
as
one
well.
more that I think still falls into the early 2000s category because it was before 2010, so I'm gonna count it. Is Ryan Reynolds, Just Friends.
Okay, that is seriously my favorite Christmas movie, and yes, it's a Christmas movie.
It's an amazing movie, and I will absolutely
It's
count
an
it.
amazing,
Yeah.
amazing movie.
Yes. But it's the whole, they're friends in high school, and they both become, well, he becomes successful. She becomes kind of stagnant because she stays in her hometown. And he comes back all handsome, and he's ready to wow her. And yeah, amazing. Of course, I love Ryan Reynolds. So anything, I will watch a Ryan Reynolds movie just to have, because it has Ryan Reynolds in it. So
It's just so good.
yeah.
Forgiveness.
And then, of course, you got to shout out Anna Faris because she was amazing.
You
in it.
have to. She was so good. I'm busy.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Amazing.
So,
that was so good.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we're almost at the hour mark, believe it or not, but we could literally talk about rom-coms for days and not even get out of the 20th century because there are so many good ones here. So I don't necessarily want to keep dwelling on them because I also want to maybe we'll do a part 2 of this in the future where we talk about more of them or whatever. But so we've kind of covered the mecca, and we've covered a lot of the actors and actresses that are associated with the rom-com. At this point, let me ask you this, because there are still what are considered romantic comedies being shown. Does it have the same mainstream appeal that it did? Where would you go to the theater to see a classic rom-com at this point? And by classic, I mean it's still a new movie, but following that rom-com formula.
No.
I just feel like it doesn't hold up anymore in the theaters.
They don't hold up so well in the theaters. I feel like so much of it has been exhausted.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, I'm ready for something to be better. And lately, I feel like, the teen 2000s have been a little bit more about like epic movies.
Yes.
And things that make you think about like this entire world and galaxy and multiple worlds and galaxies and life-changing things, or of course historical depictions of events that happen that are heavy and how they can or could have changed the course of history. And I don't know. I mean, just these rom-coms are just, and maybe it's that I don't feel like we have the same sweethearts and heartthrobs that we had then. Whatever the answer is, I don't know. I'm not going to go.
No, and I think, because that's the thing, you think, we were the audience for the ones that came out in the late 90s and the early 2000s. The target audience for, rom-coms coming out in theaters now, I think you're right. I think they have a very different view of love and relationships because it's a sign of the times. Now, I will say there is I forget the name of it, and I'm sorry, it's going to drive me crazy. There's a rom-com that either is just in theaters now or just left theaters with George Clooney and Julia Roberts.
Oh, gosh. I'm not going to remember, but I think it's on Netflix I saw now. And their daughter is getting married in some deserted island, and they go to stop the wedding.
Yep, Ticket to Paradise. Just looked it up. There it is.
There you go.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and from what I heard, it's a very classic rom-com. But did it do well in theaters?
Right.
Probably not.
Probably not. Yeah, I think the trailer was like, of course, they hated each other.
Yeah.
They have this daughter together, and then they'll probably get back together.
Mm-hmm.
And
because you know the formula, but that's okay. That's the point. If it's done well, I'll watch it. Now, I did say, like, do they have the same mainstream appeal? I don't think you're going to go to a theater to see it. They're still making them, and if they put it out to streaming, I'm probably still going to watch it.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it's not. It's not the same kind of like big. You're not going to see these box office blockbuster rom-coms anymore.
It's true. And the truth is, I mean, streaming has changed everything.
It really has.
I'm not going to go see much in general. I mean, if I'm going to go to the movie theaters, it's got to be worth my money and my time.
Avatar 2, by the way, is absolutely.
Avatar 2, man. I'm so excited. But I got to bring like a sleeping bag and,
just get seats close to the door too.
Road trip.
I mean, I had to take a bathroom break about halfway through, so I'm just saying, get a seat close to the door so you're not blocking people's view when you run out.
How do you know you're a millennial when you need a seat close to the bathroom?
At this point, yes.
All you could care about is how many snacks you have.
Yes.
But yeah, basically, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm
But
not going to go for
I
that.
mean,
It's
you're
not going to
not
happen. But
wrong.
I think that, they're not accounting that we're going to go to those movies anyway. They know they're going to make it to streaming
Yeah.
really quickly.
Yeah.
They're not looking for it to be the next blockbuster
Yeah.
or for it to win an award or anything like that. It's a quick few mil. It costs 15 million to make.
Yeah.
13 million of those went into, the cast, which is basically the two big names.
Right.
Um, and then it will probably profit maybe a couple 100% of that, 30, 40,
Yeah.
50 million. And then it'll go to streaming and that'll be the end of it. And then they sold it for whatever they sold it for. So it's just a quick money maker knowing that formula and having the two names to get it watched.
Exactly.
And that it doesn't have to be good.
No, it
But
doesn't.
in the 90s, we really thought these were good. And writers really tried to make it something.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times they were, because some of them are still considered, like we said, timeless classics that hold up very well to this day. Speaking of movies, did you go to the movies a lot as a kid?
I did.
All right.
And it was, it was a really nice thing that we did. I did it with like childhood best friends. Our parents would go with us, or they didn't as we got older.
Yeah.
A lot of times we would go into one movie and they'd go into another at a different time.
Yeah.
It was a little thing that we did for group dates. I mean, either way, it was a thing we did. We did a lot in college too. There was a theater that was $1.25.
Yeah.
And yeah, they were the movies that had come out a few months prior, but they were not at Blockbuster yet. Yep, I said it. And
well, I was going to say, you touched on two topics that I want to cover in future episodes, and I was going to see if you would have interest in one of them at least. Just going to the movie theater, because I definitely want to have an episode about going to the movies as a kid, because it's very different now than it was back then.
Oh, absolutely. Going to the movies, going to the mall, all those things.
Yeah.
They hit a totally different point now. In fact, things that really annoyed me, or they annoy me now, but I really loved doing them then.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm just really getting old and crotchety, but yeah.
You and me both.
Yeah, no, it's not a thing that like I really, really want to do.
Yeah.
I don't really want to go to the movies.
Well, the thing is, everything we enjoyed about back then, the feeling we got, we can get at home. Like, as sad as that sounds, whether it's a movie or shopping or, I mean, whatever, we can get that satisfaction through the internet now. And as sad as that is, until they can give me a good reason to go back to the movie theater regularly, by making it affordable or what have you, or, going to the stores to buy something that I can't get online, then I'm not motivated to do that. You know what I mean?
It's true.
So, oh man. Well, listen, we talked for over an hour about romantic comedies, which I'm kind of surprised that I was thinking this was going to come in around like the 45-minute mark. But we kind of covered a lot of ground here. I'm excited.
Absolutely. No, me too. And we didn't even get into the heartthrobs and the sweethearts.
I know.
Talking about those, talking about those actors, honestly, they were all multifaceted too. They did so much. That's got to be a totally different episode.
No, the heartthrob episode.
I could talk about, I could talk about Leonardo DiCaprio for an entire hour.
I mean, who couldn't? Let's be honest here.
Who couldn't?
Oh man, well,
Leo.
Yeah, well, listen, if he's listening, Leo, we're huge fans. So,
I'm not young enough for him.
Oh boy. Well, listen,
I said it.
I had a great time. It was so good to catch up with you on this, and
so great to chat, my friend.
As cynical as we both are about the concept of Valentine's Day, we're both going to celebrate it to a certain degree. I know I am, at least. And
absolutely. Cupid's arrow hit me, man.
Absolutely. So, well, listen, thank you so much for coming on the show today, Laura. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me. I had a blast.
Absolutely. And guys, thank you so much for listening. And before we wrap up, Laura, you insisted before we started recording that I remind listeners of this, but we do have a merch website, guys, for Generation S merchandise, T-shirts. I think I've got a hoodie on there. I'm just starting out with it. Like I'm kind of figuring this out as I go along. I'm designing my own shirts. So take a look. I've got some other shirt ideas that I might throw out there on there as well. I don't want to give too much away because I'm still kind of working through the bugs. But if you look on the footer of this podcast episode, there should be a link to the merch website. So check it out. We've got T-shirts up there you can see. And if you like what you see, it certainly helps the show. Feel free to grab a shirt or two for you or someone you might know that would appreciate this. And, at the very least, just spread the word about the podcast, right? There's so many people now that I've been able to talk to that have listened to the show. And, you know, the first thing they say is when I'll say, listen, I have a podcast about growing up in the 90s. And they say, well, what's it called? I say, it's called Generation S. And they're like, well, what does that mean? And then I show them a picture of the podcast logo and they go, oh my God, I used to draw that S symbol. That's the first thing they say, like 9 times out of 10. The whole idea of this show is to take a trip back at, you know, it's stereotypical or cliche, whatever, a trip down memory lane, but kind of reawakening these memories that you forgot you had. So whether it's a movie you saw or an actor or actress that you totally haven't thought about in 25 years, that's what this show is about. And I feel like we did that today. I feel like mission accomplished when it comes to rom-coms. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes. Mission accomplished. Like that game Red Alert I used to play on my computer in the 90s.
Oh, did you just quote the Tim Curry character?
Yes, I did.
I knew it. Mm-hmm. Oh, man.
Yep. Seriously, guys, go ahead. Take a look at the merchandise.
Yes.
You will be more than happy to open it up along with your chocolates and flowers on Valentine's Day, because it'll say Generation X on your chest, and then on the back it'll say you had an awesome childhood.
That's right.
Get yourself a shirt.
There it is. You're the best. I should have you on every episode if you're going to plug my merch like this.
All right. Good night, guys.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you soon.
Goodbye.